You got to change the scene. Yeah, so let's start over actually. Let's start over. Yeah, so c4, c5. Yeah, okay, we'll edit this for YouTube, unfortunately. But, yeah, we had the symmetrical English, and like I said here, we have plenty of choices here. Knight f6, knight f6, which is symmetrical. When white can go for d4 or a3. d4 is more common, recommended by Marin. First, I went for this reversed botanic system here, which is quite common, but I like white here. This maneuver knight e1, c2 to e3 is quite standard to control the d5 square. Black went a5, and here I mentioned that perhaps black should wait with a5 until white has played rook b1, so might be lost time there for black. Nothing hugely critical, but a small nuance which can make a difference. Now came knight e1, d6, knight g2, and yeah, since we kind of saved the move there after bishop e6, knight e3 is just in time to control c4 and the d5 square. Thruster went here with the unusual h5 move. Okay, he hasn't castled, so h4 is a possibility, so Kumi prevented it with h4. Castles, d3, bishop e6, knight to e3. f5. Yeah, so I said this is more or less a normal position except for the inclusion of h4 and h5. Knight e to d5, f4. Starting an attack on the king side, but yeah, here Kumi went the slightly unusual e3. And usually e3 is not so great because we can just play g5, but here with the inclusion of h4 and h5 we have prevented g5, so maybe e3 is possible here. So queen takes f1, knight f5, bishop h3 and king h8. The current position, we're all caught up, so let's actually move on. We prefer white here, and for the fourth round in a row we got this guy on the track here. We're on a football field, so some guy on the track running. Same guy. A really weird style, you know. Doesn't move his hands, like Seinfeld. She doesn't move her hands. Okay, let's get some other games. What do we have next? What's the next game? Quick look at Einar Hjalti against Jen. So that's Fidemaster Jansson against Grandmaster Stengjonsson. Normally, Fidemaster Einar is quite, well prepared. Here we have the Nimso Indian, and white goes for the Rubinstein variation. Castles, knight ge2, d5, knight f4. No, yeah, I thought we should get this one first. a3, bishop e7, and knight f4. Okay, something in a recent repertoire book by Quality Chess. c6, b4. White is trying to grab the space on the queen side. Knight b to d7, bishop to b2, pawn to a5. Black tries to counter on the queen side. b5, d takes c4, bishop takes c4, knight b6, bishop e2, and knight f to d5. Okay. Nothing too critical going on just yet. Yeah, not much to speak of here. I mean, white has slight space advantage, of course, an extra pawn in the center, which can be an asset. Black is a little bit cramped, but on the other hand, white needs to find the move with his knight on f4. We don't really want to take on d5 because then black solves the problem of his light squared bishop. And knight d3, then knight d3 we might take on c3 and then b5. And we don't want black taking on f4, so what options do we have here? I actually took on d5, yeah. Okay, at first I thought maybe we would take with the e pawn, but the more I think about it, maybe white can at some point just take here, and white has the better pawn structure because of this weakness on c6 that we can at some point think about attacking. So actually black took with the c pawn, which actually gives him, well, a solid pawn structure, but the worst bishop at the moment. Not sure what we can do with it. On the other hand, black can quickly play bishop d7, put the rook on c8, and then post the knight here on c4, and yeah, certainly shouldn't have any big problems. So black probably doing fine here. a4. Okay, just catching up with the moves. Let's move on actually to top seeds. We're playing on board 3. The top seeds, which are Grandmaster Stefansson and Grandmaster Gretarsson. There are two Gretarsson, so this is Hjörvar, so we'll put H and J for Hjörvar. Hjörvar Gretarsson with the black pieces. Board 3. And there, Grandmaster Stefansson opened with knight f3. We had pawn to d5. d4, c6, c4, e6, the triangle formation. Triangle! Because of these pawns, which form a triangle. Hannes also had this in the second round against Gretarsson as well, Helgi Gretarsson. Where we also had something similar. Queen takes c4. Well, in that game, Helgi Gretarsson went with knight f6, just played solid, and we had a closed Karlan. But here, black takes on c4, queen takes c4, knight f6, g3, b5, and Hannes plays queen on d3. It's more common to put it on c2, but he put it on d3. Not a huge difference. Bishop b7, bishop d2, knight b to d7. Castles. Yeah, the difference is, okay, if you had put the queen on c2 and white castles here, let's just go back. Put it on c2 and play the same moves. Bishop b7, bishop g2, knight b7. If white castles now, then black more or less solves his opening problems with c5, which is always the plan for black, to play c5 and have a solid structure, and if you can do that, then you're very close to having an equal game. With queen d3 and the same moves after 9 castles. Of course, the queen is now hitting b5, so we can't play c5. So this explains the move pawn to a6. Black wants to play c5, so we have to protect the pawn before we do it. It also explains white's next move. I'm not sure it's the most common, but knight c5. And the idea here is simply to prevent c5, which we can't play now because our bishop will drop. So That also explains black next move, queen b6, protecting the bishop, still trying to get in c5. And again, a4. And once again, the battle is around c5. If c5 now, we take on b7, we take on b5, and after some forced moves, we take on b5 again. We want a pawn. So a4 prevents c5. So you see, all the moves make sense, and in most openings, the battle revolves around something, and here it's around c5, which black is trying to accomplish, but it's trying to prevent. So black put c5 on the back burner for the moment. Played bishop e7, trying to get castled. Knight c3, h6, and knight g2, e4. And yeah, now we more or less evened out on the clock. Earlier in the game, Federer was close to building up a 30-minute time match, but now it's down to 12 minutes. 12 minuten. And once again, c5 has been prevented, I believe. Well, okay, b5 hangs immediately, but we can also just take and take on b7 and then take on b5, you know. So we don't even have to take on, yeah. So no c5. So black needs to castle, then we cover a8, and then we can start thinking about c5. Yeah, we also have to be careful in some cases. So I think Kira will think for a while here. Knight g2, e4. It's sure to move. Plenty of time for both players. And let's catch up on other boards. So now we're going to go to Danielson against Thorfinnsson. Also an important game because Danielson and Thorfinnsson are half a point behind the leaders. Here we had c4 by Henrik and b6 by Breyer, the English defense. Yeah, usually leads to interesting play, something championed by English grandmasters back in, well, maybe even the 80s or early 90s. Tony Miles, Spielman, and such players. And we went with e4 here, bishop e7, and he played knight c3 and e5. Yeah, another option is e6, but okay, black, usually we have white playing d4 on the second move, so we reach this by another move order. That's black to d4, yeah. And here we have interesting stuff such as f5. And, yeah, Grandmaster Stefferson actually had a game like this recently where white took on f5, which is a mistake. Because once the bishop is on b4, you always have king f8, and you just lose this rook and you don't get enough compensation. So that's a different game. Since white hasn't gone d4, black actually went with e5. Well, just because he can, I guess. g3, and now pawn to f5. And this, of course, is end to the bishop. bishop d2, knight to f6, more pressure on e4, d3, and bishop b4, even more pressure on e4 indirectly. Knight g into e2. Is that correct? Could we have... Well, technically it's hanging, but yeah, but of course, yeah. The other thing is takes, we can castle, and now it's white who's pinning. Then we take on e4, probably the pawn. Either way, black took on, no, he castled, white castled. Now he took on e4. And white played bishop d5, yeah. Utilizing the same pin, so the e4 pawn can't move. We take on d3, we take on b7. And white wins material. So black unpinned here with bishop back to e7. Bishop took on f6, bishop took on f6. Knight took on e4. Now white is threatening to take on f6, take on b7, so knight c6. Closing the diagonal. b4, trying to open it again. Black played king h8, to which Henrik replied a3. Yes, as we move king h8, knight takes f6 is not coming with check, so if we go here, let's imagine this move we could take now, we can just interpose this. And there's no good way to move this knight. So black should be well okay here. So Henrik just stayed solid here with pawn to a3. Yeah, black to move here in this original position. Yeah, black doesn't seem to have any problems to speak of here. So probably hovering around the equal mark. We have only one game left, and that's Gislason against Helgi Ás. Okay, in this game we had a Slav, Gislason with white, Helgi Ás, Gretarsson with black, c4, c6, knight f3, knight f6. Mainland Slav, d takes, a4, bishop f5. Yeah, if my memory serves me correctly, this is what I think Helgi used to play the Slav with black in his playing days. Here he goes for this knight a6 line, which is slightly unusual, but of course well playable, but not the most common. e3, knight b4, and here we can actually meet this threat with bishop takes c4, which I think he played, yeah, and then of course is knight c2 check, queen takes c2. Giving up the queen, but checkmate is stronger than the queen, so that's not a problem. Therefore black plays e6, closing the diagonal of the bishop, castles, bishop to e7, queen e2, h6, e4, black puts the bishop back on h7, bishop e3, Okay, this hangs the e4 pawn, but probably he's going to win it back with queen g4 if we take. Yeah, it's probably dangerous to take. I mean, either way. If we take with a knight, then we get immediate attack on the g4 pawn. We're going to win it. G7 pawn. For something like this, and just take. And this is tender. We can't do that. So take with the bishop first. I mean, worst case for white, he gets good compensation here. Absolutely worst case scenario. Seems like h4 should be sufficient here, and we either get a g7 pawn or we sacrifice somewhere. So that seems out of the question. So that's bishop e3, black castled, staying solid. F3 makes sense. Now black might think about taking, so we protect the pawn. And our long-term hope is that this bishop will be slightly out of the game. F3, knight to e8. Rook a to d1. And jump to d6. Bishop back to b3. Rook e8 is our current position. Yeah, which looks nice for white with a space advantage. Black hasn't really found any breaks yet, so I'm not sure how he develops his position. There's no c5. You can't move your f pawn, so it looks a little bit like black has misplayed the position. So white should be better here, but nothing critical. Wow, wow, we were. Okay. So okay, let's see which game is perhaps currently the most interesting now that we caught up. Most of them seem about equal and nothing too critical happening at the moment. Yeah, perhaps the biggest advantage so far is even in this game for Gislason. I mean, he's finished development, he has a strong center, and okay, black is still solid, but he's also very cramped. He doesn't really have any obvious way to break free, so I think most people would prefer to be white here. Yeah, I don't have many new moves in any game. On average, one move per game. So let's just go back to game one, which is Kjartason Steingrímsson. That's not Steingrimsson. It's Thorolfsson. What's wrong with you? They're all somebody's son anyway, who cares? So Kjartansson played here after King H8, King H2. A somewhat mysterious move. Most likely he wants to keep the G3 pawn defended once black unpins his knight. But on the other hand, how does he do that? Maybe Queen G8, no, not. Well, maybe King H2 is just asking black to make a move. It's a bit hard to, perhaps, for black to do anything here. I mean, you can't really move your queen comfortably. You know, both of these squares are mine. If you play Queen C8 or Queen D7, you have Knight B6. You take Queen and Rook. If you go, the idea is to protect his bishop. Same of course with E8, but in that case there's a new square. That's C7. Queen D8 could be okay, but probably not after this. Take here. And maybe even E4 here. When we win the piece, because this knight can't move. Once it moves, we actually take this one, and then the queen, and we won the exchange. So hard to move the queen. And doesn't make much sense to move this bishop unless we want to take on d5. I mean, where does it go? What does it do? If we go away, then this is hanging. This as well, so not much use in moving this bishop. Knight c2 e7. Is that something about? Maybe. But yeah, I like white here. But still, must have had something concrete in mind for king h2. Looked more natural just to play bishop d2 and try to get the rook developed. Iceland. Yeah, so this looks once again better for white. What about a move like this? Let's just try something. That could be. This could be a problem. Like this move. Now, if you take with a knight, take with a pawn, I'm attacking two pieces, you can't do anything about it. And if you move this knight to this square, I think I take here, I go queen here. I'm attacking two pieces, and once you take, you should have a nice initiative here. This knight will have to move. Yeah, and then, I mean f8. Because T6 is hanging, but then we can play here. The rook will enter the game. B7 was hanging as well. Yeah, so it's hard for black to move. So maybe he just has to play bishop takes d5, but then white probably increases his advantage because black is quite vulnerable on the white squares. Yeah, once you lose his bishop, in some cases it can be hard to protect these pawns. Most likely the bishop drops back to his diagonal. These squares are good for white knights and pressure on his diagonal, so first direction made a move here, rook b8. Yeah, one of the last pieces we hadn't talked about. Probably only one that you can move safely, and at least now you can move the queen, because once the rook goes out of the a8 square, we can't give a knight fork winning with the queen on d7, e8 or c8. So at least black improves a little bit here. But now how does white continue? To me the most natural move is bishop d2. The plan is to try and bring the rook into the game. So yeah, probably a small edge for white, but nothing concrete really, so this game will definitely go on for a while. Meanwhile, in Jensson against Steingrímsson. Yeah, we had this position with symmetrical pawns, but I like the c4 square for black. After a4 he played bishop d7, which we, well, kind of predicted. Most logical plan, put the rook on c8, knight on c4. That's exactly what happened. Knight c4. Now we must deal with this. So rook after c1. Here black took on b2. So why trade this nicely posted knight for a bishop that isn't really doing much and is on a close diagonal? That's a good question. I'm not sure I like it, but perhaps black is counting on the long-term asset of the bishop pair, but seems a long way away from being materialized. I mean, you have to open up the position somehow. Okay, I mean, you can always be solid here with a move like bishop b4, and hard for white to really do anything on the queen side, but he went bishop d6 and knight to a2. Okay, seems to simply want to initiate some exchanges, and that's our current position. And it doesn't look like a lot of fun actually. So what will most likely happen is black will try to make something happen on the king side. Maybe a move like queen h4, queen g5, just to take with the rook, or take first on c1. And the thing is, once we start something on the king side, I'm not sure how we do it, maybe f5. The bishops actually do a good job of covering all the entry squares on the c file, so white can't really penetrate or do something on the queen side, so perhaps we have a free hand at the moment. We can have a rook lift here to either of these squares, and the queen can enter on h4, d5 and try for some attack. And actually, yeah, he went for another option. Because white can't do anything on the c file, he played rook a8, keeping both pair of rooks And I think his idea is that he wants to keep an eye on this pawn while he is trying to do something on the king side. So the bishops cover the entry squares on the queen side, so now black is ready for active operations on the king side. So yeah, I actually think I might just prefer black here. I'm not sure he's objectively better, but might be easier to play. So let's see if we have some new moves in our main game. So that's Stefansson against Hjörvar Gretarsson. Okay, the challengers have also started. Maybe we'll look at some games there as well if we see something interesting. Teits og Sigfússon, Sævar Skilvi. Whoa. Okay, on to Hannes Hjörvar. I apologize for the lack of focus there. We left after knight g into e4 when black played knight d5. And here black doesn't mind if white takes. And yeah, we'll take with the c pawn, and black doesn't have any problems. So after knight d5, Hannes actually played bishop f4, allowing this bishop to be captured, and then he took with the g pawn. So white accepts double pawns. He gives up the bishop pair, but after e3, these pawns quite solid here, and also they're on black squares, so they work well with this bishop. But on the other hand, they could also become weak in some cases. But usually this double pawn is quite okay for white in Caroline positions, and this actually starts to look a lot like a Caroline. Hjörvar played here pawn to b4. Here white must select, do you want to go back to b1, and the idea then would be go to c4, but if you go to a2, the idea would be go to c1 and b3. So two different options. Knight d1 is, yeah, well, I don't want to say completely out of the question, but highly unlikely. Well, so knight b1 or knight a2, and then the knight will reroute to either b3 or c4, depending on where he puts it now. Yeah, so we have a question here that I've never had this question before. What do you have to do to become Grandmaster? Never heard that one before. Oh, just kidding. Yeah, there are three main titles with the FIDE, the World Chess uh, FIDE. Some French word. Fédération Internationale de Chess. Don't know how it's what it stands for, but yeah. But FIDE is the International Chess Federation, and they give out titles. The most prestigious one is Grandmaster. Then we have International Master and FIDE Master. Basically, to become FIDE Master, you have to reach 2300 on the FIDE rating list, or the ELO. The rating is yeah, often called ELO after Arpad ELO, a Hungarian who invented the system. Then for IM you have to reach 2400, for GM you have to reach 2500, but there's also some requirements to reach yeah, a certain score in tournaments called norms. So to become IM you have to reach 3 IM norms. To become GM you have to get 3 GM norms. And it looks like vSim has posted a link here on the Twitch chat where you can see what you have to do to become Grandmaster. So do check it out. Don't expect to start playing chess and become a Grandmaster in a few months. For those who are talented enough, usually it takes plenty of years, maybe 10 years, maybe more, sometimes less, but that's rare. So Hannes made the move. This is the current position, b4. Yeah. So Hannes is thinking here, and 10 minutes better. The time for here what? 50 minutes against 40. And yeah, actually forgot about this move, which Hannes played. You can flick an a5, and that's often useful. Because yeah, once you move the knight to either of these squares, let's say here, black can play a5, which well, attacks this pawn, and you think about bishop a6 in some lines. So a5 can be useful. That's what he played, but the pawn could also become weak here. I mean, queen c7 is natural here. Much better than queen d8. You want to keep an eye on the b7 bishop. Probably help with c5. And yeah, well, I forgot the pawn here or something. So what happens here? You play like knight a4 and I just take the pawn. Take your pawn! Is white willing to sacrifice a pawn just to play against this bishop here? Maybe we can play bishop d6 here. Just threaten mate. And h2. Bishop d6. d1. Nee. Akulor. So this, but okay, we can still play with something like this, maybe. There's no mate. Yeah, it's a bit risky though. And if we're having some big calculations here, I would prefer hero's chances. I think sacrificing 2 pawns is too much here, even if you get 1 pawn back here somehow. So queen c7 he has played, and knight a4. Yeah. Now white can black can take on f4. So white has sacrificed the pawn, and well, things are not so quiet in that case, I was kind of expecting a quiet game, neither taking many chances and perhaps a draw, but we're being distracted here, and I don't know what on the running track. Maybe you should put the camera on the track. The hell! A lot of hand movement over there. Mostly hand movement, but.
Seems the head is falling off.
Run, Forrest! Run! Yeah, so here's the link to the games. There are 5 games in the Masters tournament. Also, 5 games live in the challengers or candidates. But of course, we're focusing on the Masters because we're playing for the Icelandic Championship. What's with the stretch pants on everybody?
I don't know.
Just it.
Thank you.
Okay, now on the lane, we got an orange shirt, a blue shirt, a purple shirt, and then right behind the blue shirt, oh look at that, he's coming around, he's catching up. Oh, let's go back to the chest, that's ridiculous.
Ég reynar á sig þessu stóri þarna.
Ja.
Ég reynar á sig þessu stóri.
Já.
Hvílíkur hraði hafa
Gaurinn. Yeah, athletic fucker. Okay, enough. Enough of that random stuff. So here, oh, he took the pawn! He took the pawn, I4! He grabbed the pawn! He's not afraid! So what the hell's going on here? White has sacrificed the pawn. The only downside of black's position is that he hasn't castled, but should be able to do that quite soon. And he has the bishop pair, so it's hard to imagine black running into any difficulties here, to be honest. So I think I like black here, so I'm curious to see what Hannes comes up with. Could it be that he simply forgot about the pawn on f4? Just played a5 and forgot about f4? That's possible, but I find it more likely that he sacrificed it. But okay, remains to be seen. White to move here. And yeah, I definitely prefer to be up a pawn here if I had a choice. Já. Það komið sælir.
Komið sælir.
Took the pawn. Hvað er að frétta sig í minn?
Já, þetta fína.
Þetta fína bara.
Þetta svo brautina? Það hvernig verður það? Það er fórum mikið. Já, ertu ekki í útsendingu?
Jú. Þetta er bara casual Monday hérna hjá okkur.
Já.
Rook D8, Rook FC1. Yeah.
Hvað er þú að? Ég er bara að leika mér.
So Han sacked a pawn. What do you think about it? Did you see it? He sacked a pawn. Sko, betra hvít.
Já, ég skil ekki alveg.
Sko, þetta náttúrulega ekkert. Houdini bara svona stoppið sér að tapa sér í hvítstöðinni.
Jaha.
Já, þetta náttúrulega bara 16 plagi, það myndi marka þetta sko. Okay, probably Black will think a bit here. Let's move on to Danielsen against Thorfinnsson. Yeah. What the white pieces? Henrik Danielsen. And
Þetta vonar stjórnar Íslands á æfingu.
the black pieces. Brei Thorfinnsson. Okay, so
Ég er ekki útlendingur að halda ekki
að mér?
Já.
Já.
Það er eitthvað.
Nokkar ræð, það er kannski 300 útsendingar í heildina. Okay, so we left this game after pawn to a3. When Bragi went a5. This attacks the b4 pawn, so how does white deal with it? He went queen b3, protecting the pawn, keeping the pawn structure here intact. So it looks like he doesn't want to play b5 just yet. Because black has the black squared bishop, white has lost it. So that means some weaknesses here that white can't really deal with or cover. So he plays queen b3. Here black felt like, well, he didn't want to be calculating some options with the bishop hanging here on b7, so he just played rook e8. Queen back to b2. Yeah, I guess he didn't want to be hit with knight d4 anymore, so queen b2, queen e7. Another attacker on the b4 pawn. So another defender. Now black takes. And since the a file is up for grabs, black actually went back. The rook to the a file, rook to a8.
Nei, hann var já, það mjög Kristján Stræðars.
Oh, no.
Yfir hann. Já. Kristján heldur þetta.
Ah, why don't we?
Sævar.
Oh. I think Sarah won.
Annan.
Yeah.
Ha. Það?
Yes. Let's check it out.
Steindautt.
Maybe it was, but he lost it. Rook a8, rook f1. Yeah, we're not having as exciting games as yesterday. Most of them look rather equalish. Check it out. You can go to chess results also. Yeah, he lost, didn't he? So as usually, Henrik is playing quite fast, so he has about a 20-minute time edge. And that's quite usual in his games. He likes to put pressure on his opponent on the clock. Sometimes that pays off, but sometimes he plays too fast and pays for it. So it's a double-edged sword. Finally, let's move on to last game, Gummi Gísla against Helgi Ásgríðarson.
Stendur innlega. Já, hvað? Já,
We have a question, guys. What's the average rating in the studio? It's from Björn here.
Ég finn ekki út rétt á meðan.
It's 22. It's turned to the stern. Skirbenson in a punter cup.
Jú, akkurat þessi húnuldi, sko.
Let's focus here. Hello, focus. Timothy's against Helgios, which we left. We liked white after rook e8. Queen f2 was played. Prophylaxis, king h8. Queen g3. Okay, white's transferring his queen to the king side, so black has already moved king h8, so there's no take. Queen b6. Rook to d2. Oh, which might have been potentially a bad move. Yeah. Well, not a bad move, but yeah, you'd like to keep the bishop here. 95 might be a nice move here. Because you're attacking two bishops. This one and this one. So we can't keep them both. White went with bishop takes d5. C2 on d5. And now knight to b5. So okay, black is starting to break out a little bit. I mean, at least he can put a rook on the c file now. First we have to worry about this f7 pawn now. So knight b5, yeah. Of course you can't take on b5 because takes, and that's a problem. White can at least draw here if he wants. There's also oh, we can just stay here, take here, and this can't be taken because mate here. So we need to deal with this pawn right now. Can we play bishop g8 like Braunstein? Could be possible. The Braunstein-esque bishop g8 after knight b5 might even be the best move here because bishop g6 is hanging. Yeah, there's a famous game by Braunstein where he played bishop g8 in the cower count to protect his position and finish development. I think that's what he might have to do now. Okay, yeah, we have like 1 hour. We're going to take our first short break right now, but we'll be back quite soon. Matt Damon. Gene Gravano and Matt Damon. Matt Damon. Niet echt. Oh ja. So here we are, back again. Back again. Let's do this. Let's do this. So it's time to see if anything has happened. Which games you will look at. Some developments in Kjartansson, Þórhallsson. We have an exchange of queens. Like I suspected, not many moves in Hjörvar's game because he's been thinking for about 20 minutes, which I thought he might. Yeah, we'll just leave this game. Íslandsson Helgi Ás, he indeed played bishop g8. And like I said before the break, famous game where Bronstein played bishop g8. And for those while watching on Twitch, I will post a link to this game. Are you going to be kibitzing with me, Sigurður, or should I just... So let's start with Gummi Kjartans, because Gummi er bestur, skilur. You agree?
I agree.
You agree. So Gummi half a point behind the leaders with 2 out of 3. So if he wins this game, then he has chances to battle for top honors in this tournament. But of course, still a long way to go, and I have a feeling he'll play on for a long time here. He played e4 in this position that we have on the board, and after knight fd4, he took on e6. Another difference between these two outposts, the one on d5 and the one on d4, is that white can, if he wants at some point, take on d4 and be left with a knight against the bishop, most likely a good knight against the bad bishop. Queen f7, attacking the knight, queen f8, and you can't capture this piece because of the perpetual check that we'll give here. So it looks like they exchange the queens here. Queen takes f8, rook takes f8, king g2, preventing the rook from penetrating on f2 or f1, and then knight c2 d4. So yeah, it's safe to say that white has some positional advantage here. But the question is how much? Is it enough to win? I think I can safely predict that. I think only white can play for a win here, in my opinion. But you never know. Gummi, I mean, sometimes he pushes a little bit too hard for wins. So you never know if he tries too hard and even loses. But at the moment, black is defending. Can't really generate any threats. I mean, if you if it's black to move and we try to attack this pawn on t3, we can always play bishop e3. It seems no, there's knight c2 actually. So no, there's no knight c2 because then we take the rook. So black can't really create any threats to speak of. So black thinking still, yeah. No, white. Knight c d4, yeah, white to move. So yeah, we can. Okay, he's not gonna play bishop e3 now. Well, we might, but yeah, maybe bishop e3 and then rook b1. something like this, try to play b4. But there's no rush. White can play rather slowly in this position and see what he wants to do. So nothing really spectacular going on in this game. Einar Hjalti against Héðinn. Well, actually, quite boring as well. I'm not even going to bother to change the names. Let's just get the current position: Rook c3, Rook 8 d8. Still rather quiet. I thought Black might try and attack on the king side, but not much has happened. So let's move on to Stefansson and Hjörvar Grétarsson, which was the game we wanted to focus the most on in this round because it's the leaders of the tournament, 2.5 out of 3. So we left it after queen takes f4, rook f to c1. When Black decided to play it solid here with c5, immediately giving back the pawn. So he was worried about this bishop becoming a bad piece. White perhaps putting something on c5. And getting a classically bad bishop in return for the pawn. So he played c5. White took on c5 with the pawn. And then knight to e5. Yeah, and currently the well, 2 engines are scoring this. It is completely equal, while one has it as somewhat better for Black after queen g3. Both cases seems like Black has to exchange queens. Looks like we have yeah, there's an athletics exercise on the pitch, and we have one of the arbiters of the tournament asking the coach to start blowing the whistle.
Yeah.
Because he was blowing the whistle quite near to the tournament hall, which somebody didn't like. I have a feeling that who didn't like it and who complained. G3 makes sense. White wants to actually exchange queens, but in doing so he wants to improve his pawn structure.
Ég held þetta að vera sniðið hjá Hjörvari.
C5.
Hættuleg staða á móti hann.
Yeah. Yeah, the danger with not playing c5 is, like I said, if you just castle, maybe. Okay, we could maybe even start with e3, but knight c5 at some point. And the thing here, okay, we're attacking the bishop, so if you take, we can take back. Yeah, I think this is just White can never lose this. I mean, this pawn could be lost. This bishop is bad, so I don't want to end up with White winning back the pawn. Playing solid moves like e3 and then maybe win back the pawn. And then he's positionally bad, and the c6 pawn could also drop off the board. So this is clearly what Hero was worried about. So he just decided to give back the pawn, activate his pieces. So now he's down a pawn, but he's hoping that he will not have any.
Yeah.
I mean, he gave back the pawn, so the pawns are equal, and yeah, he's hoping that now he has no bad pieces and things should be okay. I mean, yeah, queen g3 happened, and h takes g3. And now the computer actually liked taking on e4 and castling queenside with opposite colored bishops. Anything else? doesn't look too great actually.
Það var að finna þetta.
Yeah. I mean, because, okay, I think he kind of has to find it, because like any other move, like castles, let's say knight f6 check, bishop takes, and okay, if you want to keep this pawn, then, well, this is just a horrible square. I mean, c6 is coming either way, no matter where you move the rook. We play c6, and this pawn drops, we play c7, the promotion square is covered, so seems like bishop takes e4 might even be forced, and probably black's idea, because he thought for 20 minutes plus before he played c5. So it looks like he has to play bishop takes e4 here, otherwise white might have a big edge here. But let's see what happens. Yeah, take on e4 and takes, and you can solve this attack by castling queenside, which looks dangerous, but I mean, there's no immediate way to attack this pawn. And the white, the black king will always be safe on c7, it seems. But even still, white can put a pawn on c6, which looks scary, but maybe we can contain it. I would still be scared with black. I mean, like,
Ég ekki viss hann að vera búin að sjá þetta.
no. Looks like the bishop on b7 and the pawn on a6 will become a problem for black. I'm afraid Theodore is in trouble, except if bishop takes e4 and long castles. Yeah, we agree, but even still, if he finds it, then doesn't look super great. I mean, if I just maybe push your knight, because I want to put the bishop on safe square at some point, bishop f3, knight g4, bishop f3. Well, maybe I don't want to push it to a good square, but maybe c6, king c7. Looks absolutely forced. Otherwise, if well, okay, bishop f6 or something, c7, knight d6. Yeah, it's checkmate. Oh, thank you for the game. I'm sorry. Yeah, c6, maybe king c7 forced. Unfortunately for black, it's hard to kick this king away from c7. And once you start attacking a6, then maybe we can counterattack the c6 pawn.
Það er lána að hugsa svolítið núna, þannig að...
Yeah, but even still, even this looks better for white because of the a pawn. The white pieces just look better. They're all on the queen side, or pointing to the queen side, and black doesn't really have any dangerous counterplay to speak of. So I'm a bit worried here for Hjörvar actually.
Já, leikur hann að hóku d4 eftir f4.
After f4, rook d4. Yes. But I'll just put it on. I wanted the f3 square for the bishop anyway, so just move it back here and then back to f3, I guess. But okay, so it still looks tricky, and actually after 8 takes g3, Hjörvar didn't take on e4, he went rook to b8. And unfortunately, looks quite bad.
Fortunately for Hjörvar.
Unfortunately.
For Hjörvar.
For Hjörvar.
Not for him.
Not for Hannes, that's correct. So maybe I am revealing my alliance in this game. Yeah. Come says knight d6. Why is this so good? Bishop takes. Bishop takes b7, rook takes b7. C takes b6, d6 is a threat here. Yeah, and we can't bring our king because knight c5. If with castle, probably knight c5 as well. Maybe
Maybe f4.
maybe f4 and yeah, a lot of options like f4, rook c6. All this looks very, very annoying for black. Way too passive.
Ja, han leker f4 istället för taktik.
Instead of 96, yeah. Can't like f4 as well, unfortunately for Hirvar. Yeah. I mean, I guess this move comes either way at some point. Yeah. So it looks like Hirvar didn't manage to solve some problems there. Yeah, maybe this was just an interesting pawn sacrifice. The queen takes f4. Rook fc1 if we go back. Sacrifice the pawn on f4 here. Played rook fc1. Now he has the positional threat of putting something on c5, which is hard to deal with. Yeah. Yeah, so like we mentioned earlier, like castles, putting something on c5. It's very hard for black to deal with. So current position, here we're down to 19 minutes, 32 minutes for Hannes. And actually, if Hannes wins, it's not great news for the tournament. Because he's now got a good lead. Well, most likely somebody else will win, so half a point. But it will be hard to catch up to Hannes, who's already 12-time champion, so no need to root for him. He's got enough for any lifetime, you know. Yeah, let's see. Quick look at Bragi first. Bragi Þorfinnsson. Well, this is also an important game. If anybody wins here, they're gonna move up the leaderboard. So we left it at 18. Rook f to e1. Queen f7. Trying to bring the queen over to the king side. So rook went back to f1. Which is never a good sign. b5. Knight to a5. Not sure what the knight is doing there. Knight 2 to c3. Bishop e7. Rook f e1. Yeah, by the way, if anyone knows how to turn off the sound in chessbase, why not do this? It would be nice. Knight b6 might win on the spot. Yeah. Knight b6 check. Which game was that? Hjörvar maybe, knight b6. Oh, there's always king c7 after knight b6 if we're talking about the same game. So rook fe1. Yeah, this is a weird game because. Yeah, he went rook e1, rook f1, rook e1. Did he go rook f1 twice? No, just once.
No, three.
Yeah. So there are no clear pawn breaks. I mean, white can't go d4, he can't go c5, he's never going f4. And we can yeah, we can say the same about, we have a move actually, we have two moves, rook a to e8. At any time you have a position where there are no clear pawn breaks, well, okay, yeah. What I was going to say, when you have no clear pawn breaks, There's only piece play, and at the moment it's really hard to really improve pieces here. So my feeling is we will have a
Dead draw.
perhaps that draw, but maybe a long drawn out game. I don't know.
Oh, I don't think so.
I mean, white must watch out. I mean, if you want to move this rook, then you're allowing this knight into the game. Yeah,
Better shot.
yeah, I think I would prefer black. I mean, the rooks are nice, but nothing really happening. But if white does nothing, then, I mean, how does black improve? Maybe bishop a8, knight b7, g5, something like this, but it doesn't seem really dangerous. So, looks rather quiet, so let's go on to...
Þannig að það mesta fjörið.
Yeah, we're really lacking action in this round. Bishop g8 was played like we predicted. The Bronstein move, queen h3. Now we can take on b5 because we protected f7. 8 takes b5, and bishop f8. Yeah, if you take on b5, it's... I haven't even calculated, but it looks a tad bit too dangerous for black. Yeah, I mean we're just gonna grab all the pawns at the very least.
Don't hold the rest.
Yeah. So 3 pawns for the piece. I'm threatening a big jack right now. Maybe bishop f8.
Bishop G.
Bishop d5. Yeah, either way, knight h6 probably forced. Maybe not so clear, I don't know. It looks dangerous, but he didn't want to allow anything like this, so bishop f8. Can I take maybe? Knight b5, bishop g, knight takes f7. Yeah, the computer has this line around equal, king g8 and then knight g5, yeah, not taking on e6, okay. Bishop f8, rook c2. And now, well, can we think about taking now? After rook c2, queen takes b5.
Seems like it.
Yeah. I mean, these bishops look passive, but they're defending the king side. If you can take on b5 and play rook c8, then I think the extra pawn will just count in the end.
Lóku síðustu, það þessi of mikið.
And then double, or are you worried about this one? Hvað er ágjörð þessu? Ég er að spája, já, rook c8 tekur f7 og tjók. Rook c8 við tekum f7.
Það fókur í þessu.
Yeah,
Nei.
Yeah, then if rook e7, yeah, then maybe we can start taking again. But then again, okay, it doesn't seem to lead to mate, just compensation. As you play, queen takes b5, rook c7.
Fann ekki ett.
Yeah, there's a possibility of something like this.
Bishop D6. Nei.
Yeah, and one point here, like bishop c1, we can play rook c8, and now if you take, we take on c1 at the end. Queen if you check. Yeah, I don't really see. I mean, what else should black do? Okay, maybe rook to c8 now is also possible if you're afraid of these lines. You don't want to give Can white play there? But does it matter? I mean, if you play rook c8, we double. You have to take and then
En við
similar situation.
ekki möguleika að leika réttar að 10 svo.
Yes.
Hvernig var það?
Yes, if rook a c8 and some lines. We might play 97. Take 97. Yes, and then we can take on h8 because yeah, h6 I mean. And not we can't interpose this because it's the queen. Queen d6. When? Now.
Nei, ok. Leikur hana. Þetta er réttar að 10 svo. Leikur hana þetta.
Yeah, that's true.
Þetta er hana 10.
Queen d6 or d8 and then take with the queen. And yeah, black shouldn't have problems here.
Morkin biskup hana.
There's also maybe now rook takes e8, rook takes e8, take on d5, which we forgot. Also from the hanging rook. Yeah.
Já.
So yeah, I think he might just take on b5.
Já,
He'll think for 15 minutes, down to 8 minutes, and then take.
Think calculus.
Let's have a look at the main event again. What happened after f4? Knight c6, knight d6, check, king d7, knight takes f7, rook h to f8, knight to d6, king to c7. So black has given up another pawn, but in the process he's hoping that maybe his pieces are slightly better off now, and at some point he can win the a5 pawn or the c5 pawn. Yeah, it's gonna be a tough defense for black. And Hannes doesn't. Well, he's usually quite good in positions like this. Doesn't make many mistakes. Defer.
Met Damon.
Yeah, Hannes with 26 minutes. Here we're down to 16.
Nei, það fara lítið út.
Yeah, not looking too great. Yeah, also the pawn on e6 isn't thrilled with its existence. Pawn on b4 and a6 not special either.
Það skrítið að tölvuna mitt í ennþá vera.
Yeah. Yeah, it's clear that the most black can hope for in this game is a draw. Yeah, the thing is that like white can just play solid here. Just put all your pawns on black squares to work with the bishop, restrict the black pieces, and then you can slowly improve the position. Bring your king to e2 maybe. King to e.
Tóku B5 hérna.
Yeah, maybe counter attack. Yeah, we might also think about sticking this one in here first. Yeah, yeah, okay, we can't move the knight just yet, so there's no knight d4, so maybe no rush to play e3. Yeah, then e3 king f2 king into at some point we can think about maybe
Já, lifir þetta B6.
a rook lift here. Play rook b6 instead of taking. So two white knights posted up in the heart of the enemy defense.
Það er líklega góða lifir.
Yeah, looks like a good move. Knight d4 is currently the computer's best move. Knight d4. The idea is to go to b3. So I guess if takes. What? I think I need to, yeah. Yeah, knight d4 is possible. And the computer likes it, but yeah, the position doesn't look too great for here, it seems. Let's go back to board one, where Gumi is trying to squeeze something out against Þröstur Þórðarson. So knight c to d4 on move 23. We had bishop e3, logical move. Knight c2 and some further exchanges. Knight takes e3, knight takes e3, g8. Knight jump b5. Now rook takes f1. Gumi will take with the king most likely. Now black needs to protect the pawn. Bishop f8. And looks like black might suffer for a while here. Yeah, we can put an on d5. I mean, no bishop e7 just yet. And then at some point we'll play b4. Black might have some counterplay at some point on the king side with g5, trying to get a weakness here on h4 or on g3. So if white tries to move the king over to the queen side to penetrate, then black might try to do something. But also if you play g5, one of the knights might swing back to this newly created weakness on f5. So this looks, yeah, just much more pleasant for white to play. I think we'll see these moves almost 100% appear on the board in a few minutes. Both players have around 20 minutes left. Yeah. Well, does the Icelandic champion make the Olympic team? I'm not sure.
Could be.
Could be. Well, he will make a strong case for himself. But yeah, most likely the one who wins is gonna be
Já, við minnum að segja öflag.
be on the team either way. I'm not sure there's a rule. I think it used to be a rule, I think. Like when Jon Victor won in what 2001. Was he on the Olympian team? I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this endgame, yeah, this is suffering for black, and I think we can. Where do I have it? We're not going on a break. We're not going on a break. We're not going on a break. We're just going to show. We're going to sum up black's situation in this game. So this is the situation for Thruster currently, and for Hjörvar actually as well. But difficult situation. Yeah, I have a feeling. Okay, Thruster might actually hold the draw, but he'll have to suffer for a while. Suffering in the station. Okay, but things will move along rather slowly there. I think Einar Hjalti and Héðinn was looking rather boring as well. To be honest, 21 rook 88, rook d1, b6, g3, g6. We just have symmetrical pawns and no significant pawn breaks. Knight d3, rook takes, queen takes, rook c8, queen b3, bishop e8, rook c1 takes, knight takes, knight d3, h5, bishop d1, h4, and queen c2. So we reach move 30, so they can safely offer a draw if they want. Doesn't seem to be much to play for. Unless White wants to play for a win. Because, I mean, he has the knight, and bishop is quite dead, so. But yeah, I would agree to a draw with myself here at least. I'm not sure what they think here. Or who's trying to win, if anyone. Einar Hjalti. So Hannes, have we any moves here? Do we have any moves? Oh my goodness. Rook f2 d8, which does not look like a good move. Because according to the computer it's +3 now.
No.
Simply with rook d1.
Sem normal leikur.
Yeah, which is a normal move. And the thing is, if the rook moves again, then there's always rook to d7. And then taking c6. So what can black move? Let's say something like bishop f6. And I guess we take. Well, maybe something stronger.
Nej, det gäller nog.
King takes, then what do we do? Rook d6. Yeah, maybe this. We take, and it's hard to protect against this pen. Just gonna play rook c1 next move.
Right.
Well, we start with this. Well, actually, yeah, okay, maybe I was a bit too quick there. Played rook c4, which seems to. Well, according to the computer, rook d1 entered the game almost immediately, +3. Let's see why. Bishop f6. Is there anything completely concrete here that we're missing? Maybe this double. Maybe this double and then take on b7. I don't know. Play rook c4, which computer says is 1.3, which is still Still pretty significant. I mean, black doesn't have any counterplay here, unfortunately. Forget about it. Getting a bit tired of that question. Hey man, why aren't you playing? The terminal was quite strong, and I'm just fall a little bit outside of that particular rating range.
Yes, yeah.
It's too much suffering. You know, why is just threatening to
Landslið í vandræðum.
ha.
Landslið í vandræðum. Landslið?
So rook c4, he just wants to grab this b4 pawn.
Já, þú kunni ekki bregðast rétt. Já, svo.
Yeah, it's hard to do. Yeah. We'll keep an eye on this, but not looking good right now. Henrik Bray also looked quite quiet. Okay, at least we have a change in the structure. Let's have a look. Down here is in Thorfinnsson, 23, queen to e2, queen to f7, rook f1, pawn d6, knight to d2, bishop to c8, does not want to exchange, knight d5. Beep! Offside! Well, to me it looks like white has improved a little bit. But still, shouldn't be anything serious for black. He takes f4. Rook takes f4. And black to move. Took an f4. Took a rook. Took a rook. Oh, knight takes f4. Yeah, I don't like what black did there or didn't do. Didn't really do anything. So white has improved somewhat here, I think, but still black should be well solid enough here to hold the draw. So I have a hard time imagining anything other than a draw here. Well, actually, queen f7 is the only move. Why is that? If we go to f5, then there's bishop h3 and this hangs. Go to h6.
Þetta gefn.
Might work, because if we take, then check, another check, and then take the rook, win the exchange.
Það ekki það.
Doesn't have to take, that's true. What can you do, yeah? What can you do? Because if you go here, there's still a check. This is mate if you take, so...
Yeah.
Must play queen f7 here, so... Finally, at least a way to go wrong for either side in this game. It has been rather quiet thus far. So let's stick around here while Bragi finds a move. He has 6 minutes left, so yeah, I mean, Queen 8 6 just makes no sense. I think we'll just play Queen F7 here without a doubt. Queen G4. Yeah, Queen G4 is also a blunder because we just play Queen F2. And now we're threatening Bishop H3. Oops. Because the bishop is hanging here. And there are really no good moves because if you save the bishop, Queen has no squares. Oh my goodness, he played Queen G4. Oh my god. Ay ay ay. So this was game deciding blunder if Henrik finds Queen F2, which but
Yeah, impossible.
yeah, this looks rather easy to find. Queen G4, unbelievable. So yeah, looking too hard for a draw here. Queen F7 is just very, very solid, you know. You keep everything under control. Ay ay ay, this is quite a bad blunder. Because a good result here, well, and in the tournament, you know, potentially, I can think about a seat on the Olympian team. But okay, Henrik hasn't yet found the win here. Well, unfortunately for Brian, it's not so easy to, well, not so difficult to find here. It's a bit camming. I'm just wondering what he missed. Did he miss that the queen doesn't have any square, or Queen F2 has been played? So wow, wow.
Já, skrýtna manúver ekki við biskupana.
Yeah, just looks like a game-ending blunder. So why did he go Bishop C8? I mean, we went through this move rather quickly, but yeah, okay, yeah, yeah, maybe just take on G2. Okay, you weaken the light squares, but yeah, it's still a positional advantage for white either way. I mean, I didn't like D6 for some reason. Thing is, black doesn't really have to do anything, just wait around. D6 I didn't like. Because why, you know, why lose flexibility with the bishop? Why weaken some white squares? Looks solid, but okay, after F4 takes. It's still okay after Queen F7, it seems. I mean, there are no immediate threats, everything is covered. Of course, white stands better with the more active pieces, but nothing decisive. But after this, Queen G4, Queen F2, it's just game over. Prey has 4 minutes left. And unfortunately, it doesn't matter how much time will be handed to him here.